So, what's the big deal about getting sober? What's the big deal about stop using the substances that have made your life flow until now? Why would you even put yourself through that? I know for me, when I drank or smoked or did whatever I was doing, it was an escape. It was allowing me the freedom of being myself. I didn't have to think about or worry about what other people were thinking or what other people needed. I was doing it for myself because I hadn't allowed myself to have the freedom. I was living in this situation within my own mind, this mental jail cell, if you will, of having to make sure that everyone around me was doing okay. We're happy. It was just something that I picked up along the way, just something that I picked up through my childhood where I subconsciously felt like I was responsible for maintaining everyone else's happiness. But that's my stories that I told myself. And today I would love to share with you exactly where I was and where I'm at now, no longer using substances. Hi, my name's Frankie, and welcome to Balanced Rebels, where I share the tools and insights that have helped me along the way in this new chapter of my life. Little tools and insights that keep the ball rolling in more of a balanced situation. By no means are we ever going to be fully balanced 24/7, but having some insight onto maybe where we can put some more effort in one space and let go of a little effort in another space. Moderation is key in everything. It is possible to have too much of a good thing. And these tools and insights that I've come across in the last couple of years have definitely made a difference in at least my life and being able to see where there needs to be a little bit more give and take, a little push and pull. So I'd like to invite you right now to go ahead and subscribe to this page, like this video, shoot, even save it for reference later. We're all on our own path, and there's definitely no one way is the only way. But I appreciate you greatly for hanging out and hearing my side of the story. So, a little backstory on me. I've practically been drinking since I was probably 11 or 12 years old. It was something introduced to me as a way to let loose, to socialize with people, to be part of the crowd, and as time went on, it just became a part of how I showed up whenever I was around other people. It allowed me to let down those barriers that I was speaking of earlier of trying to people please and make sure that everyone was happy. It was that freedom to be able to just do what I wanted to do. And in the same aspect, as I said before, also, we can definitely have a little bit too much of a good thing. Now, alcohol was something that allowed me to be free, and dabbling a little bit in the cannabis aspect, that allowed me to really shut down my mind and not have to worry about the situations around, right? It was another step that allowed me to push super hard throughout the day and then know that I was going to be able to come home and just go numb and forget about all the madness of the day. These two substances are something that I used for most of my life. Up until about 2 years ago, I would balance out my participation in those substances depending upon the time of day, depending upon the circumstance. Growing up in a small town in the middle of nowhere, that was how we socialized as kids. That was how we had fun. And as I grew up, it's funny how that passion of fun turned into I wanted to own my own bar at some point. Like, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've started a lawn service with my mom when I was 8. So I always knew, the benefits of having the freedom of owning your own business. So, as one does, you follow your passions. You follow what you want to do, what you're enjoying at that moment. And bartending, serving was something that I started because it was super easy money, right? As a kid, it's if you haven't ever served, you can get a pretty decent tips and make a good living, but it's so draining. And again, it was fine because I had those escape outlets. I could drink when I got off, I could smoke when I got off, and I could just completely melt away whatever kind of drama had been going on that day. Because we all know in the workforce, in the workplace, in life in general, there's always some kind of drama. There's always someone who it just really has to tweak that nerve, has to stir up some shit in some aspect or another. But as you continue down that path, or at least in my aspect, I realized that I wasn't getting the same benefits as I had been. You know, as a kid, I would drink and it was fun. And then once growing up, it was definitely more of that release. And eventually, I was even a part of the Oxycontin epidemic in Florida. I was down there bartending, and a friend of mine actually handed me some before we went to the gym, and I realized how open it also allowed me to be. How it allowed me to not feel the pain of being on my feet all day, and it allowed me to be open and have those conversations with people like alcohol did. Now, that's a whole different substance. And if you know anything about Oxycontin or you know anybody who's been on Oxycontin, it's what they like to call the hillbilly heroin. It's definitely a chemical that goes inside of you and allows you pain release. Like, that's what the whole purpose of the drug is for. But it also has such an addictive quality that after about 3-ish to 5 days, your body is dependent on it. Otherwise, you get deathly sick. So, with that being a part of it, on top of the fact of my line of work being in the bar business and needing to be open and needing that pain relief, and eventually seriously feeling like I had to have it to survive, that became a whole 10-year stint of my life that it was a point in my life that I had accepted in thinking that, well, this is just how it's going to be forever. Until the price went up and I was spending so much money just on feeling normal throughout the day that eventually it gave me that click of a wake-up call of there's got to be something more. Using substances feels as if it's the only way to survive. And honestly, if you don't know any better, then it literally is your lifeline. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should be sober 24/7. This is why I don't classify myself as being sober, because heaven forbid, tomorrow I may want a beverage, or maybe I would like to take an edible. I don't like the confinements, and this is maybe just a me thing, but the confinements of knowing that I'm not allowed. That completely ignites something in me to the point that I don't feel free and I don't feel like I have control. And allowing myself just to change the verbiage of the words that I don't need it. I have put the time and effort into not wanting it and looking at life through a different lens. Now, I'm not going to say that just one day I decided I don't want to do this anymore. Let's see what kind of madness we can create in our life. I definitely got myself into some situations with substances because I was overdoing it, trying to chase after that initial feeling of the freedom. And I pushed it too far. And let's just say that the government pushed back. At the last straw of where I started to really start changing things in my life, I was actually on probation, and at the time I had a medical card, so I wasn't allowed to drink alcohol or do any other substance, but I was allowed to participate in cannabis, which at the time I was like, oh my God, I would have never survived if I wouldn't have been able to have this, which is really funny because that's just a story that I told myself. And eventually, I even quit smoking cannabis, which was something that I did there for a while from wake up to go to bed, always challenging myself, always trying to take it to the next level. And eventually decided to try something new. In this moment of trying something new, I had just opened up my own barber shop, and I had been turned on to TikTok for advertising for it. I had never been on TikTok before, and if you know anything about TikTok, it's very addicting in its own aspect. It's definitely just full of dopamine kick from just scrolling through, and hours can go by before you even realize it. I was exercising and I was going to the gym daily. It was a challenge in myself to even start going to the gym. Previously to that was whenever I was handed over that first Oxycontin, going to the gym. and it was for the gym. So I had to reframe the gym in the aspect that, for one, I didn't need a pain reliever to go to the gym. And for two, I had to overcome the fear that I had given myself, because what the hell was I going to do at the gym? Like, all these people know exactly what they're doing. So why would I go to the gym and make a fool out of myself? And let me tell you, it was definitely a process. Luckily I had a friend who took me to the gym who worked out with me, so I had some understandings of the machines, if you will. But when it finally came down to just me going to the gym, it was definitely just a baby step at a time workup to be able to be comfortable to go step up to a machine on myself. And this was more of just those limiting beliefs and these little stories that I had been telling myself that are so ridiculous. Almost of the fact of, like, if you step up to a machine, this big muscle dude is going to come and push you out of the way because he wants it. Like, never in my life have I had that happen, but it was just a stupid imagination that I had in my head. It was also that people pleasing that I had picked up as a kid, and I didn't want to be in the way. Like, I was afraid to take up space because somebody else may need it. So heaven forbid that I take that opportunity from them. Which is so crazy in its own aspect, for the fact of, like, I'm worthy too. You are worthy. Like, we are allowed to take up space. But these little limiting beliefs were things that whenever I drank or smoked, especially more so with that liquid courage, I didn't care. I cared about what I wanted to do, and I gave up that fear of pissing someone else off, of being in the way. And once I started really stepping back and being just in my own mind instead of escaping from these things that I didn't even realize that I was escaping from, I really started to see, like, where that whole escape comes from. With getting into TikTok and that being my new entertainment for the time being, I was checking out workouts. I was not really watching all the crazy shenanigans that is posted, but I was keeping it more on a business level. And then I found workouts, people posting videos of workouts, which eventually led me into, like, the spiritual side of TikTok and mindset growth and tarot, and it just was this evolution, this whole rotation of all kinds of stuff that I had never considered, never had been around, had never heard of, and I got very intrigued by it all. Again, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, and in my case, I didn't quite look outside of TikTok. I definitely became a dopamine addicted person who was like, well, this is all the information I need. And even being a 4.0 student in high school, I allowed myself to get wrapped up in all of this information that I was putting in front of myself. All of this feel good stuff, all of this ways to better improve yourself. I had never heard of manifestation. I got really into the steps that all these people were telling you to do. And honestly, it did change my life. And it did push me in a direction of seeing more of what was actually available in life. I started to actually practice meditating. And everybody tells you once you start meditating, you got to take it in steps, kind of like myself in the gym. You got to take it in steps. It's going to take a little while to unfold that, like, natural ability. And I did the few minutes, and then I started catching myself, like, really enjoying just relaxing and, participate in a bowl or two, and then just lay back and meditate. My meditation, although was not real meditating, there's all kinds of different meditations. And the one that I was focusing on was not thinking about anything, like, just allowing my mind to be. And in that kind of a process, like, the way I would do it would be to visualize being just in a blank, like, almost a black, no surface, no nothing, just out in space. And I would try to sit there and I would try to see myself in nothingness. And when you think of a thought, the goal is to accept it and then let it go and come back to your nothingness. Something I found whenever I was smoking before or eating an edible would be that I may be in nothingness for a moment, but then I would start attaching to thoughts. A thought would come in and I would really attach to it and I would try to grow it and I would try to use that time, if you will, to figure out what this next step meant for me and why this idea was there and what I could do with this idea. Because one thing with meditation is it allows you to kind of step outside of what's going on in the world if you allow it. Where I started attaching myself to this thought, these were thoughts that were happening from external situations, things that maybe I felt like I desired or things to better a situation that was happening. And I wasn't allowing myself to just be. Can you see how the steps start unfolding? Pretty much throughout everything, I was treating one addiction for another. The dopamine kick of being on TikTok was that feel goodness of learning something new, which is something that I also enjoy. So, to an extent, I did replace the feel good of being free by using alcohol or smoking cannabis to having that feel goodness of just learning more information. And eventually, I even quit smoking cannabis, which I thought I would never do. It was another story that I had told myself that I had to have cannabis to relax and I had to have cannabis to be able to eat. And I replaced it with dried passion flower. So I still had the repetition of smoking out of a bowl, but instead it was passion flower, which passion flower helps with anxiety. It's good for depression. It's something that relaxes you, but doesn't get you heady. It doesn't make you go straight to your head. And I know that there's different indica and sativas, believe me, I know. But this was something that wasn't a high, something more that just soothed instead of took away, if that makes sense. So once I really got out of smoking pot and chasing these wish upon a star manifestations through TikTok and all the knowledge that I was learning through that, I did end up pushing myself into finding more money. Manifestation is a real thing. It's all about the action you take. It's about coming up with what you want and then putting forth the action towards it. And the most powerful thing about manifestation is really understanding your why. I found and I proceeded to accomplish making quite a bit of money doing different things that were way outside my comfort zone, but that I had seen others accomplish making good money in. And the whole reason of even being in search of more money is once I opened my own hair shop, I realized that I was capped. I was inside these four walls and I had put it on such a high pedestal throughout my years that once I realized like that was it, I had made it and I felt so unfulfilled for years to come. It really depth dived me into seeing that there was more possibilities out there, and the full force of wanting more money and more freedom really drove my next addiction of learning how to accomplish more. And I will say that I did. I found multiple avenues and I started learning a lot of different avenues and finding what could make that money. But the main thing that I really missed out on that I learned after I did accomplish making money in these other avenues was the whole why behind it. Why was it that I wanted all this money? Why put myself through all this? What was the actual benefit and where was the fulfillment of it? These were questions that I couldn't answer. I had lived most of my life for other people. I had a little chihuahua for about 14, 15 years. And in the mix of this spiritual awakening of opening this shop, of learning all this info on TikTok, I had to put my little booger down. And she was my ride or die. She was the reason why so many times prior through the Oxy epidemic, through drinking myself into desperation, she was the only reason I stuck around. And so not having her, not having any kids, not having any real purpose for living when my entire purpose of living was for other people that I had inside my mind, it became a big wake up call as to like, why am I still here? What do I want to do? Where do I go from here? And I'm completely free now. I can do anything. I had realized the possibilities were so open, and I overwhelmed myself with all the possibilities. And until I found my why, until I was actually asked, why do you want this? It really became a game of tug and war of, well, which direction do I freaking go? Like, this is what I want. But then the little demons inside my head would be like, well, if you did that, then this could happen. Or are you really worth it? Or do you think it would really work out? Or whatever little stories were going on. And so I couldn't commit to anything. I was half in this days of TikTok spirituality that whatever comes to you is meant for you, but I wasn't taking ownership for myself. I wasn't taking ownership for what I truly wanted, for what fit the best for me. And finding that why and testing out these different avenues and creating these connections with other people in different aspects of my life really kind of brought it all home, really kind of brought that aha, like, well, shit, like, I really got to work on myself. There's things within myself that I totally was running away from and that I was totally suppressing that I didn't even know was inside of me. And that was the main purpose for from me myself to use substances for so long, because it allowed me to be free. And that's just something we all want, the freedom to be ourselves. And the easiest way to get there is to use substances, especially whenever you see everyone else being able to relax and use substances and be themselves. So on this journey and coming across all this, that was my aha moment. This shadow work that everyone talks about, this diving deep into your inner child, and whatever terminology some of these people are talking about is really just you actually going inside yourself and hearing what kinds of crazy little stories you're telling yourself and why. They become so second nature. They become part of you, especially when you've been living with them for 20, 30 some odd years, that you don't even realize that they're there. And unless you're looking for it, you're never even aware that you can do anything about it. On the surface level, you hear people say all the time that life is never ending. I was so gun ho for the last 2 years when people would ask me, what have you been up to? My response would be trying to figure out what to do with life. And the same response would be, well, aren't we all? And I just couldn't accept that. So now on this mission to understand a little bit more of how some people actually do accomplish everything that they ever dreamed of, and how others of us tend to get stuck in the same cycle, same position, I've really come to learn some really great tools and some different steps and some different viewpoints of how to keep moving forward. I'm learning what my actual passion is, and I'm learning how to actually live for myself while also being a decent human and living for others. Because in all, you can't live completely isolated, but you also have to be able to set those boundaries. And I'm really learning how to actually live for myself and find my passions. Influence is so real beyond who we're around, who we socialize, our environments, but then also clearly through all the media that we take in, the social bits of it, movies, whatever, we're constantly being influenced. And I'm now learning how to really own who it is that I am and release the fear that not everybody's going to like me. There's still so much to uncover. And I've committed to deep diving into learning more about myself and sharing what I learned for others to help themselves. So, again, if you haven't already, I invite you to go ahead and subscribe to this channel and leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. Have you ever caught yourself escaping or numbing to be able to just make this life that we live tolerable? Have you caught yourself chasing that feeling of being free, yet maybe overdid it a few times and now you're seeing the consequences of it, of not having full control? All in all, I just want to say that I am grateful for you. And if you too have stepped away from substances in a daily manner, congratulations. Let me tell you, you're not alone, and welcome to the true you. Until next time, bye.